are here today with Natalie Walker, who is the founder and the executive director of Rain City Rock Camp. Natalie, thanks for being willing to talk with us.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So why don't you start with telling me a little bit about the history of Rain City Rock Camp?
Sure. So we were founded 3 years ago. We started off as Girls Rock Seattle. We formed out of Portland's Rock and Roll Camp for Girls. So our program is modeled after an organization that's been around for about 10 years. A volunteer at the Portland camp, she and I both saw what was happening down in Portland, the way that the girls were changing, the way that the community was building, and we realized that it would be awesome to have that program in Seattle. So a few years ago we got it started, and now it's just taken off since then. So we changed our name recently to Rain City Rock Camp for Girls, and our campers a few years ago, our last camp session, helped us choose the name. So it was cool.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah.
So, my assumption is for those who either work with girls or folks in the industry, they get this right off the bat,
Sure.
Why this work is important. I'm wondering if you run into folks who don't get it quite as easily, and maybe what you say to them to tell them why your work is really important.
Sure. So we come across people every once in a while who wonder why we don't include boys, who are kind of curious why we have it as girls only. That's kind of what we come across, people who don't get it right away. Or why isn't there a rock and roll camp for boys, which maybe there should be, but we kind of look at least from the music industry aspect of our organization, we see that we are kind of taking the place of something that doesn't already exist. We see there are not a lot of women on stage, there are not a lot of girls playing traditional rock and roll music, so we are existing to kind of fill that gap. We also have a self-esteem portion, which I think would be great for boys too. So that's the part where I say, yeah, maybe there should be a rock and roll camp for boys where they have that self-esteem portion, but not necessarily for the we need more boys playing rock and roll portion of it. So more self-esteem for everybody is what I see as needed, but yeah.
So I read on your bio on your website that back in your younger days that you were really looking to sort of shake things up and change the world, and I'm wondering, is this part of the bigger vision for Rain City Rock Camp?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'd love to see just in general girls and women and everybody being encouraged to express themselves freely. I see that music is a really powerful medium to have people just let go and feel empowered. So I feel like music is already something that we all relate to, that we all find a personal connection with. So using that music education to help people free themselves of, how they feel they need to be, I feel like we see really powerful changes with it. So, other art mediums probably have a similar effect, but music, I feel personally, is really strong.
Do you think that's particularly important for girls and women?
I feel like it is, but I feel like just in general for people. So I feel like for men and boys as well, but they might be more encouraged to express themselves through music in that way, and girls maybe not, at least not in the traditional rock and roll sense. Yeah.
Let me ask you from a programming standpoint. It seems like there's a lot of elements in the programs that you offer that go well beyond just the music education.
Right.
Why are those pieces in there?
The pieces are in there because we're not just about teaching a girl how to be a virtuoso on the guitar. We're teaching girls to feel free to express themselves. We're teaching them self-esteem. We are showing them role models. So although music is, sort of our guise, we say, oh yeah, come learn rock and roll, but that's part of what gets them in the door. And I feel like, I keep saying rock and roll, but that's sort of just a mentality of approaching anything, just feeling okay and just being your loudest self, kind of figuratively, but then also we take that literally too. So you go into our camp and into our programs, and we're loud, literally, and then we also are, just be your loudest self, be whoever you are, whatever that may be. And maybe it's not by playing guitar or playing drums, but maybe it's by being a welder or being a visual artist or, being in a non-traditional career. something like that. So that's kind of our take on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. I would think that having women as teachers and coaches and role models for the girls is sort of fundamental to the programs that you offer. Are there other ways that that you sort of work with your staff or your volunteers that to help them work specifically with girls in the programs?
Yeah, we do lots of trainings throughout the year and before our camp to build the community, to build the culture of how we want camp to be. So we spend a couple of days with the volunteers talking about what our philosophy is on teaching, how to deal with girls at different age levels, but it's definitely something that we're still working on and still developing because it's a youth program, and we're bringing in musicians who are learning how to be teachers. We're bringing in industry professionals who are learning how to show that to girls. So it's kind of an interesting, it feeds into the self-esteem of those who are involved as well, the volunteers. Like, wow, I actually have something that is changing people's lives just by showing them what I can do. So it's cool how it's also empowering our volunteers who are involved. How
have you both developed and maintained relationships with women in the industry who get involved with your programs and are interested in supporting?
One of the parts of our mission, important parts of our mission, is by creating a community of female musicians and mentors. So part of our way of doing that is by doing a ladies rock camp, by having events throughout the year, benefits shows that feature some of the bands that the volunteers are in, things like that. So it's just a start, but I see it as being something in years to come where there's just this network of women and men who are supporting each other. So I feel like we kind of have it separate now to sort of make up for that gap. But eventually it's just everyone supporting each other and being their most rocking selves. Yeah. It just so happens that I feel like there's a disadvantage, and we're trying to take care of that.
Yeah. I'm assuming there has always been that community that's been here in the area existing, but also a little bit of a sort of latent possibilities as well.
Exactly. And it just doesn't seem that overt, and maybe it's just not something that I'm tapped into, but there's sort of this tendency to for women to feel like they need to compete, or that somehow there's only enough room for one woman on stage, or one popular female band. So we're also feeling like maybe we're breaking down those barriers too, and sort of relearning ourselves the way that we treat each other. So that's part of what we're hoping to do as well in our ladies rock camps and in our trainings, and kind of reteaching ourselves how to treat each other.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I heard you spoke about sort of the impact on the girls based on the work that you do.
Right.
I'm curious, do the girls impact the women who are involved in the programs as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like sometimes creating music can feel a little bit selfish, but at the same time, a lot of us get into it in order to make a difference. But, as an independent artist, sometimes it feels like your reach is just so tiny. And I feel like I was really moved by seeing women on stage when I was young. And I always thought that if I were to have that effect on somebody by being on stage, and if that were to encourage a girl to take the stage by seeing me, then that's it. I've done my job. But if no one's coming to your shows, or there aren't all ages shows for girls to be at, this is sort of just directly showing them, rather than like maybe one day a girl will see another woman on stage and feel like maybe she can be a musician. We're showing them very directly, wow, look, the woman who's running the sound at camp, it's not a sound guy. It's a sound woman. So we're very directly showing all the jobs and all the possibilities, not like, oh, hopefully you'll see a sound engineer one day who's a woman, and then you'll think you can. No, the person who's recording you is a woman. Oh, cool, maybe I could do that.
What are some of the biggest lessons about how to support the young people that you work with, both in terms of becoming fantastic musicians, but also becoming empowered girls?
I feel like there's a piece of the puzzle that we have yet to create, and that's sort of a continuous mentorship. I'd really like to see us develop either a band coaching sort of situation or year-round lessons. I feel like that's an important piece of the puzzle. But just having that contact at camp is, I think, the first step.
It's a tough environment out there right now for nonprofits, and I'm wondering how you all are adjusting to the new fundraising and programming environment, and in particular, how your emphasis on work with girls, how you've adjusted sort of your marketing pitch out there in the world.
Well, it's interesting for us because there hasn't been a transition because we started in 2008, and I've heard that's kind of when the transition happened. Around that time, I had a lot of people saying, oh, the grants aren't really coming through that used to, things like that, which were grants that we never had because we didn't exist. So it was already kind of a risky environment to be starting, the beginning of a recession, 2008. So we haven't seen a decline. We've only seen growth because that's the only way we could go. And we've had just an outpouring of support from individual donors. And as we gain staff people, that won't be the most sustainable route. We will need to apply for grants. We will need to look into corporate sponsors, things like that. But it's just been amazing how we've been able to just grow exponentially with a core group of individual donors, which is growing steadily every year, but still really small, a really small base. Well,
it's huge to be able to sustain yourself through sort of a diffuse network, as it were, kind of thing. What hooks them? What both brings them in and keeps them, kind of a thing?
There's a couple of things. Something that we really benefited from in the beginning was the fact that there was already a branding that existed. So the Portland Rock and Roll Camp had been around when we started about 7 years, and it's also kind of a movement. So we're all the rock camps that are getting started across the country and also across the globe for the rock camps for girls. We're all affiliated under the Girls Rock Camp Alliance. So there's already sort of, even if you go to another city, they may say, oh yeah, I know what you're doing. So when we first started here, just saying that we were starting a girls rock camp in Seattle, we already had, the Seattle PI wanted to do a story. We were able to book the shows at the benefit shows at the places that we wanted to. It was already like we had this existing credibility. So I feel like that was really fortunate for us. The programming, the idea for the programming already existed. And since we're so close to the original camp, Seattle in proximity, there were a lot of people who had already sent their daughters to the Portland camp who live in Seattle, and who had been hoping for years that there'd be one in Seattle so they'd, wouldn't have to travel to Portland for a week. And Portland was actually really grateful for us starting a camp because they were turning away 60% or 40% of their applicants every year because they didn't have enough room, and they were getting new sessions every year. Oh, now they're running 4 sessions. Oh, maybe they have to run to 5. And it's a lot of work. And they're like, yes, we're so glad you're starting in Seattle. So there was also a documentary that came out in 2007 about the Portland camp. And it was featured at the Seattle Film Festival. And so a lot of people had seen the film, and it's a really good representation of what goes on at camp. And it really shows what the mission is of the organization. It really shows the transformation of the girls who go to camp. So a lot of people had seen the documentary.
And they were
yes, I know what you're doing. I didn't even have to give the speech. Yeah, you guys are awesome. Oh, okay, cool.
So they welcomed you right in, and
exactly.
Sort of perfect launching pad.
Yeah, so excellent. It freed up a lot of our time to, really develop a strong program and really develop a strong organization. Like, we were starting a nonprofit, so we were able to take that extra time where you'd normally be trying to, get the word out. Hey, we're credible. This is what we're doing. Please understand. We didn't have to worry about that. We already had press. We already had people who trusted us. Now we can develop, get a board of directors. We can get our 501c3 just do it right. So I feel like we were allowed that because of our kind of pre-existing reputation.
Excellent. It's obvious that the broader community has been really important. I noticed on the Friends page of your website, you've got a lot of connections to a variety of girl serving organizations, and I'm wondering, beyond the sort of direct music community, what other interactions you've had with girl serving organizations and support have they been along the way?
We're hoping to do some more partnerships with some girl serving organizations to give out our scholarships. So we give out full scholarships for camp, and it's just something that we know that there's other organizations who work with specific communities, and we worked with Powerful Voices, we worked with TAF, and we worked with McClure Middle School this year, and Real Girls to give out a couple of scholarship spots, and I hope to continue to do that, and also being involved in the Northwest Girls Coalition. I hope that we can have our program work with other programs, other schools, to find a way to get our program to more girls in different communities. And I've heard of a lot of schools and that don't have music programs, and we have one.
Right.
So being able to bring our program to places that need it. It's just a matter of networking and collaborating.
Well, it's obviously you have gotten a lot of support along the way. I'm curious, what have been sort of your biggest challenges or biggest places where you feel like you need support from the broader community?
Sure. I feel like growth has been a huge challenge in the fact that we've grown really fast. And we had every year, besides our very first year, we had exactly the number of applicants that we had spots for. But then every year since then, we've had way more applicants of campers applying than we had spots. So this past year, we ran 2 sessions of camp, which was a huge stretch because we have, to run a week of camp with 60 campers, we have about 60 volunteers, which means that 60 women in the community, who are many of them musicians, have to give up an entire week, which is sometimes their vacation time, sometimes it's just pay without or leave without pay. So to find then double that, now we need 120. And if we run 2 sessions, that means, so all of our instructors are women, so then you need to find, okay, we need 2 drum instructors for 1 week. So we need to find 2 female drummers in the community who have a week to teach drums for free. Okay, now we double that. Now we need 4. And sometimes it's a struggle finding 4 female drummers in the community at all, which is part of why we exist, right? So hopefully as the years go on, then we're creating more and more and more, and then, now there's a bunch of female drummers. And then eventually, we'll just put ourselves out of business because we won't even need to exist then. But
Right on.
so volunteers, and that's the main thing, and then just being able to have the staff to run enough sessions.
So what's next on the horizon for Rain City Rock Camp? What can folks look forward to?
Well, since we just ran an in-school program in a high school at Scriber Lake High School in Edmonds, and it was a huge success. We all loved it. The girls there loved it. It was awesome. So I really hope to do more programs like that throughout the year, and we're doing 2 summer camp sessions this year. There will probably be 3 in the future. We're doing Ladies Rock Camp every year, and that will probably happen twice eventually. And as far as year-round programming, we hope not only to be in schools, but maybe to be running our own programming in our own space. We have an office space, but eventually it'd be great if there were a building that existed that was, Rain City Rock Camp, and you come here and you take drum lessons and your band practices and you have your band coach there, and that's sort of in an ideal world.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for talking with us this afternoon. I'm assuming if folks want to find out more, they can go to raincityrockcamp.org. And in the meantime, thanks a bunch for all the great work that you're doing out there.
Thank you.
For talking with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Good. Thanks, Natalie.